Centralizing, buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air. Fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one makes countries. Lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slide, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. See their shit, force a bear. Fuck them back, it's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one makes countries. Lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again. Yeah.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ron Stevens. This is Rock the Boat right here on UCY.TV. And today is, I don't know, 19th or 20th of, what is it? 20? 20th of November. And we got some white stuff on the ground this morning. Not as much as I think a lot of people have. I think we missed most of it. There were some pretty wicked-looking streamers coming off of Lake Huron, and they just nicked us, which is fine with me. It looks like they headed down to London, Ontario, and up around Barrie, so they'll be happy up there because the ski hills are up there. So it is the 20th of November, so we can expect a little bit of snow, but I don't think it'll hang around. It's supposed to warm up some in the next few days, so hopefully it does, because, well, I'm not really ready for winter yet. And a big shout out to all those people who join the chat every week. I much appreciate it. I much appreciate their input. Sometimes I get a little ragging going on in there. Sometimes I get a shot taken at me in there, but that's all part and parcel of the game, isn't it? So, if I can find this, I put this into the Facebook last night. I've been talking about McCarthyism a little bit, and this being the third Red Scare, because this is the Third World War. They had the first, what they called the Red Scare after World War I, and that's when the League of Nations was created. And it was created to create a world government and the state of Israel. That's what the whole First World War was about. And these satanic dogs who are amoral, psychopathic sociopaths who have been shown no remorse for all the damage they've done to the people and the world over the years want a world government. So way back, World War I, Israel didn't like the location that was offered to them, and the United States didn't sign on the League of Nations. So while it was a partial success, it wasn't a full success. So along comes Depression number 2 and World War II. And the outcome of that was, of course, the creation of Israel and the creation of the United Nations, which was just really a rebranding of the League of Nations, same game, control everything and everybody on the planet, and create this stupid state of Israel working together. That's why people wonder why, all these sanctions against Israel, how it is the United Nations are not nobody else ever puts their foot down on Israel because they're one of the players. And that's why it was created, world government. So call them Jews, call them Zionists, whatever you call them, but they ought to be, if you're going to build walls in this world, you ought to build a wall around Israel ASAP. A lot of people won't like to hear that, but that's just the way it is. So then we move along to World War III. The first two were bombing wars. The third one is a spiritual, psychological war to take down the West. The funny part is, you got people that dislike communists and people who dislike capitalists. Problem is, they're the same group of people. They're the very same people. And they're chasing the same goal, which is world domination. And the world government and their world religion, that's all they're interested in. And the interesting part is, when I got talking about McCarthyism, they tried to call, the American people didn't want nothing to do with the League of Nations because they were concerned about the infiltration of the communists. And they didn't have any intent of giving up any of their sovereignty, which was required by the League of Nations. You become a state of the League of Nations. And they said, this is no good. So as much as Wilson, who was the president that brought us the Fed, the people didn't want nothing to do with it. And Wilson traveled across America and warned America that if they didn't sign on, there was going to be another war in the not-too-distant future. Now, how would he know that? Simple, because he was told that. Wilson, you get them to sign on, or we're going to do it again. And the people didn't sign on, and they did it again. So, after World War II, we had a massive influx of communists and that into the West. And Joe McCarthy wanted to call it out. He did his damnedest to call it out, but of course, the Marxist, communists, infiltrators, whatever we're going to call them, already had control of the main media. They had control of Hollywood. They had pretty much control of the schools by that time. So it wasn't a big job to shout the guy down in what he was trying to do. And so that allowed the further infiltration in all parts of society of the Marxist, Communist, Leninist, Stalinist, Maoist infiltration into the West. And so they've had basically complete and total control over all aspects of your society since the end of World War II. And World War III, it's not a bombing war. It's a bombing war of sorts because anybody that doesn't want to come on board, which goes back to Warburg in 1950 Senate hearings, who stated specifically will have world government either by consent or conquest, and Saddam Hussein I forgot his name, Libya, Gaddafi, were instances of conquest. And that's all that was. They didn't want to get on board, and so they got pounded into the ground and killed off. Spreading democracy, they call that. Spreading demonocracy is what it is, because that's what democracy is. It's demonic as hell. And so now they're coming in for the final shot, and that is the consent process, and that is to get the West to consent using things like global warming and so on and so forth to convince the people that if they didn't hand the reins of their nations over to the globalists at the UN, that the world would end because of our harming of the planet through CO2 emissions. Well, I think there was enough CO2 emissions dropped in World War I and World War II to negate anything you've ever done. Nowadays, if you try to dig a little water catch basin on your farm, they're going to come down on you like a ton of bricks. And I think that little hole that you dug to contain some runoff water is probably a much smaller hole than, say, oh, I don't know, the bombs they dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. I would imagine the hole's quite a bit smaller than that. So, you know, people got to come to grips with the propaganda. Anyways, I was thinking about all this nonsense about, you know, high-density housing and that a little bit during the end of the show last night, which kept me up till 3 o'clock in the frickin' morning again. And a lot of people were, they like Pete Seeger and that. I looked into the guy a few years back. The guy's absolute Marxist, communist, Maoist. Sang the French song Internationale, which is absolutely Marxist. And he also did this little song called, what was it called? Little Boxes or Tiny Boxes or whatever the hell it was called. I got to find this where it went to. Where is that? Doesn't seem to matter how many tabs I shut down during the week. By the end of the weekend, I'm buried in these things again. I want to thank my good old computer here for the most part hanging in there with me because I get so many tabs open. It's almost like it wants to fight back at me here. Where is this puppy? Where did that go? It was here. Unless my computer got tired last night, and where the heck did I get to? Oh, here it is. Little Boxes. Now, Little Boxes is a lot of people used to, you know, it was a kind of a kid's song almost, but it was definitely a song in your face. So, I'm going to stick that in the chat. You can listen to it. And whoever actually made the video up, nailed it pretty good. You're living in little boxes, and that's where they keep you. And so I'll stick this in the chat. You can listen to it. And we're going to take a quick look at a bit of Pete Seeger history, and hopefully that will... We're talking about the second and third Red Scare. And I did equate that at one time to a baseball game because the batter's on, you know, basically need a home run here. Yeah, it's 2 strikes, 3 you're out, and he's at the bat. And, you know, they strike this guy out. It's over. And the Reds, if you want to call them, win the game. And that lands us in 1,000 Years of Tyranny, so we don't really want to go there. But anyways, this little song, Little Boxes, pretty much spells out what's going on here and how you're controlled from the day you're born. And it's true. So I'm going to stick that in the chat, and you can listen to it and enjoy it. And TSA, Road Dogging in the chat, just put this in. TSA has announced that stuffing and cranberry sauce is now a liquid. Pretty interesting. But that's just the way it operates, right? They just say whatever the hell they want, and the media pukes it out there. Doesn't matter what they say, the media just pukes it out there. And people go, oh, what am I going to do about my I was going to, oh, this is, when is Thanksgiving? Can somebody put that in the chat? What day is Thanksgiving in the United States? It's got to be pretty quick here. I know it's awful close. close to Christmas. Is this Thanksgiving weekend in the United States? Somebody's got it, throw it in the chat. I'm not sure what that is, but I can see somebody, it'll be like planes, trains, and automobiles, eh? You won't be able to take the plane because you won't be able to get out with your cranberry sauce and your stuffing maybe if you're going over to Grandma's house for Thanksgiving. You'll have to jump in the back of a hog truck maybe just to smuggle your cranberry sauce. And Thursday, this coming Thursday, yeah? So, yeah, if you may want to hitchhike over to Grandma's there. I don't know if you want to get on a plane. You don't want to dick with the TSA because they'll steal your cranberry sauce and your stuffing, and that really messes up anybody's Thanksgiving. So you may want to get out the planes, trains, and automobile video there and scratch the plane part and figure out how you're going to get to Grandma's house or your parents' house or whoever's house you're going to. Because if you're transporting cranberry sauce and stuffing, you may be sorely saddened going to the airport. And if you get on the bus, maybe you can sing "We're the Flintstones," which is always a nice Thanksgiving song. Freaking world's gone off the deep end. But little boxes. So we go and we look at the life and times of Pete Seeger. And where do we find the life and times of Pete Seeger? We find this at the Fight Back website. The Marxist Voice of Labor and Youth, the life and times of Peter Seeger, 1919 to 2014. We lost the spirited voice of the oppressed and exploited January 27th, I guess it was 2014, yeah. As Pete Seeger drew his last breath, having reached the age of 94, Seeger had lived, fought, and sung through several tumultuous periods of ebb and flow of the class struggle over many decades. As a youth in the years and the rise of the industrial unions in the 30s, he was part of the generation of radicalized youth drawn to the ideas of Marxism and socialism. In the period of the political reaction following World War II, he stood up to the anti-communist witch hunt, which was McCarthyism, never wavering in his devotion to the interests of the working class and the struggles against racist opposition. Known for his always present banjo and his singular ability to get everyone singing, he was a much beloved figure in concert as well as on the picket line. That's where I met Pete, on the picket line of striking packing house workers in Wisconsin in the autumn of 1987. He cheered the pickets and their supporters by leading us in singing a few rousing songs from the history of the labor and civil rights movements. Later that night, I had the pleasure of attending his concert in a packed ballroom, yada, yada, yada. He penned a number of memorable songs, such as the anti-war "Where Have All the Flowers Gone" and the retelling of the Bible's book of the Ecclesiastes, Turn, 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 later turned into a rock hit by the Byrds. Pete's recasting of the spiritual "We Shall Overcome" was adopted as an anthem of the U.S. civil rights movement. Pete's half-sister Peggy, who survives him, and his half-brother Mike also became prominent folk artists. Pete came of age at the time when popular music was gaining influence in a commodified form as recording companies began to assert their dominance over popular culture. And that's the other problem, okay? None of these movements, all of these movements were created for purposes. The music industry was controlled for purposes, to move the people where they want them to move to. Now, a lot of these people down on the street have no clue what the hell is going on. They just are joiners. They never investigate anything. They just join. Bah! And they run over there and they hang in there. And really never do any investigative work, any research or squat. They hear something that resonates with them and they jump on board. But all of these movements, all of them, are created. All of them. The movers and the shakers, they create the chaos and then they bring in the solution. Okay? They oppress the workers, then they fire up the civil rights movement. They've always done the same thing. It's called problem, reaction, solution. always moving the masses to where they want them. And Pete was a big help in moving the Marxist, communist, Maoist nonsense. I mean, he went after McCarthyism and call it racism. But anyways, where are we going here? Born May 3rd, 1919, into the relative comfort of a middle-class family, Seeger was able to attend private boarding schools and then Harvard University as a journalism student. His politics and music took him away from serious study, though, and he quit after 2 years. His father, Charles, had been a classically trained musician, but he had also been drawn to the recording of folk and popular songs and chants, just becoming available in the early part of the 20th century. He was also drawn to the communist movement in the 1930s and began writing articles on music and culture for left-wing magazines. As Charles started working closely with another left-wing musicologist, Alan Lomax, who had traveled the South with his father, John, pioneering the capture of live field recordings, yada, yada, yada. At first, these folk field recordings were of interest only to anthropologists and musicologists. They were looked down upon in the music circles as novelties, but in the mid-1930s, as the Communist Party turned away from its third period ultra-left binge and toward its popular front search for broader connections, leading elements in the CP began promoting black and labor folk music as proletarian and distinctly American art forms, deserving as much attention and respect as the fine art from Europe that was patronized by the rich. Suddenly, not only black musicians from Mississippi Delta, but also activists from labor battles in the Appalachian coal fields and the southern textile mills began touring through northern cities to sing their songs. People like Aunt Molly Jackson and Florence Reese, who wrote the famous Which Side Are You On?, became celebrated folk artists. Steeped in this new and growing political and cultural milieu, Pete had learned to play the ukulele at a boarding school, but when he was 16, he accompanied his father to North Carolina Festival, and there he fell in love with the banjo, becoming a communist. By the time he was 20, Pete had already dropped out of Harvard and joined the communist movement. He had spent most of 1940 on front porches in the South, learning banjo licks and tricks from using unsung master hit players. He joined forces with the predominant communist folk musician of that time, Woody Guthrie, taking a road trip through the Appalachian and down into Oklahoma, getting a real feel for the lives and struggles of workers along the way. Peter joined the Young Communist League in 1936 and the CP in 1942. The Communist Party was born in the same year as Pete Seeger, 1919, formed by those members of the left wing of the Socialist Party who have become inspired to emulate in the U.S. This is really important stuff. The Communist Party was born the same year as Pete Seeger, 1919, and formed by those members of the left wing of the Socialist Party who had become inspired to emulate in the U.S. the victorious Bolshevik-led revolution in Russia. The CP's ability to advocate openly for a socialist U.S. was severely curtailed from the outset by political repression. The capitalist government had been alarmed by the post-war labor upsurge around the country and worried for its ability to maintain control. Ultra-left sectarian and conspiratorial tendencies within the newborn party was strengthened during the initial underground period, but weakened again during the 20s as post-war prosperity settled in and working class struggles subsided. The heavy repression eased off, and CPC slowly became an open political organization. So when you go back here, that they wanted to emulate in the U.S. the Bolshevik-led revolution in Russia. Now you go back to the Reese Commission with Norman Dodd, and when he was talking to a guy from the Ford Foundation while the Reese Commission was investigating, led by Dodd, investigating what these tax-exempt foundations were up to, the guy from Ford apparently told Dodd, well, that's easy. You don't have to do investigations. That's all you want to know. We'll tell you. Our job is to help Sovietize America. So, I mean, this is what's been going on for a long time, people. And again, the capitalists are the communists, and the communists are the capitalists. They're the same guys working to move the people where they want them, to move the politics where they want them. So in the end, they control everything and everybody. So it's all one and the same. You know, there's a story one time, a guy came from Russia, I think it was, and came to America. He left Russia and came to America. And I guess this was the Iron Curtain days, so I guess he bailed and got to America. And after about, I think it was 6 months, somebody asked him, you know, about the difference between the freedom in America and Russia and a capitalist and a communist country. And the guy apparently said, like, I was impressed when I first got here, but once I've been here for 6 months and I look around, I don't really see a difference. Because it's all about control from the top by a very few rich and powerful men. And that's absolutely true. They're control freaks. And you're just the cattle, you're the slaves, you're the surety on the debts. So, you know, if it doesn't matter where you live, you're pretty much in the same boat. We've got to change all that somehow. Let's go down here. This is some pretty interesting stuff in here. The CPUSA, like similar young parties in other countries, had the misfortune of being consolidated during at the time its political mentors in the Soviet Union were degenerating politically. The isolation and backwardness of the Soviet Union had created the conditions for the ascension to power as Lenin lay dying in 1923 of a bureaucratic layer of officials and directors largely inherited from Tsarism. And this is exactly what we got now. Okay, it's the bureaucratic layers. Bureaucratic layers are put in place everywhere. One is Russia. Okay, and again, if you go read the book, The New Despotism, written in 1929 by Lord, whatever his name was, in England, in 29. Now, this is talking about 23. By the time Lenin lay dying in 23, a bureaucratic layer of officials and directors largely inherited from terrorism, which found its point of political support within the ruling party in the person of Joseph Stalin. Stalin's skillful maneuvering led to the eventual physical elimination of the entire Bolshevik leadership team from October Revolution and consolidated its own Bonapartist political dictator over the Soviet Union. And that's exactly what was being warned about in the 1929 book, The New Despotism. Was directly looking at the bureaucratic layers laid out in France. So this is not new. It shouldn't be news. We should have been taught this stuff in school. Maybe you were. I certainly wasn't. So this is where we are today. The politicians really are just window dressing. The bureaucrats, the commissions, the boards, and all this kind of stuff that were created by the legislature, which are not answerable to the legislatures, is the problem. That's what's running your nation. And they were all set up in order to push a world government and a world religion. So this is how this has worked. The leadership of the young CPUSA became heavily embroiled in these Moscow intrigues, robbing it of its ability to develop naturally a healthy, leading cadre educated in the Marxist method and wizened by its own experience. A hardened factionalism of power caucuses had poisoned the internal atmosphere of the party through the 20s, a factionalization that became useful to Stalin in his maneuvers within the International. Some of the most capable and self-sacrificing U.S. communists found themselves expelled and shunned simply for failure to denounce a particular falling star within the Russian party in a timely manner. Over time, a leadership that had lost touch with Marxist principle coalesced within the CP, one that lacked confidence in its own ability to think things through, and instead always looked over its shoulder to Moscow for its political direction. This early political deformation shunted the party away from its task of preparing the forces who could lead the socialist transformation of the U.S. and brought with it the seeds of CP's own later undoing. Nevertheless, the CP-USA embrace of militancy within the labor movement, its initiative in organizing new unions and unemployed councils, and its open challenge to Jim Crow segregation brought its massive growth and expansion during the 1930s. In a world mired in capitalist depression, that's the depression that this is again them warning Wilson back in after World War I that if they didn't sign on to the League of Nations, we're going to war again in the not too distant future. So they fired up another capitalist depression. The reflected glow of the spectacularly expanding economy of the Soviet Union, uniquely unafflicted with the stagnation and misery of the Great Depression, made the CP especially attractive to American workers. Okay, so it's all controlled. Struggling to survive. It won the support of the huge bulk of the most forward-thinking working class fighters who came into activity during the rise of the CIO unions in the 1930s. As a result, CP members were in the thick of many of the most important labor and anti-racist struggles throughout the country during the Great Depression. The CP thus became the predominant organization of the advanced workers in the U.S. Joining the CP carried Pete Seeger straight into the heart of the class struggle in an explosive time, connecting him intimately with the lives and struggles of workers and youth throughout the country and around the world, a connection that would hold him all his life. Fusing folk music and politics. Returning to New York following his year of banjo study, Pete resolved to devote his folk music to the cause of organizing workers. For Pete, music and politics were all one piece, and he considered any compromise with commercial success to be a deviation from what he was all about. Along with Lee Hayes and Millard Lampo, Pete formed the first urban folk singing group in U.S. history, the Almanac Singers, in early '41. They made quite a splash, singing both traditional songs and newly written parody attacks on President Roosevelt's preparations for U.S. entry into World War II. They cut a couple of records, including the album Talking Union, which features Pete's most famous song of the same name. Lampo arranged for the CIO to help the Almanac Singers, including Woody Guthrie at this time, do a national tour supporting union organizing efforts that year. More workers were on strike in '41 than in any year since 1919. So, end of one war, ending the next war. And both of the things were done with the same template. They don't throw work, they reuse it. You know, that's why they always say history repeats. Of course it repeats because the same people are controlling it. And they just change out their templates. I mean, you can look at music, you can look at art, you can look at all kinds of things, and you'll see that if you take a time period of usually between 25 and 35 years, what was old is new again. They just run it back because it's all tagged to the same template that was used in the past. And people need to understand that. They just go to the shelf and get the template that's required for the particular time, a template that worked in the past that will work at this particular time, and they reuse the damn thing. They just rebrand it a little bit. Anyways, this is kind of an interesting read, seeing as come from a communist website. The members and supporters of the CP felt strong pressure to fall into line behind its multiple sudden shifts of policy under threat of expulsion and effective isolation from the movement. The CP maintained a pacifist-sounding denunciation of Roosevelt's war preparation, but only from the signing of the Stalin-Hitler Pact in August of 1939, until Germany broke the treaty with its invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941. At that point, the CP leadership shifted to an all-out support of Roosevelt and the war efforts of the U.S. imperialism in lockstep with Stalin's opportunist approach. Both political courses set aside perspective promoted by the Bolsheviks during the First World War of seeing in the world political and military crisis of capitalism resulting from reaching the limits of capitalist production, the ripening opportunity for workers in all the belligerent countries to prepare for winning power and beginning the socialist transformation of society. The other thing is about Stalin. The shift between the United States and Russia. I mean, Russia was an ally in the war, but immediately after the war, all of a sudden Russia was no longer an ally but a foe. This is all planned out, completely planned out, but the media never tells you that, your teachers never tell you that, your preachers never tell you that, the politicians never tell you that. So, these little boxes that you put in that song, it's actually a very, very in-your-face little video. The little boxes they're talking about in that video, the idea is to make those little boxes smaller. Now we're pushing tiny little boxes and little condos, all by the light rail transit system. Okay, that's the final game plan here. Lock you into the cities in smaller and smaller, ever more surveyed, spied upon, pretty much the writings of 1984. Everything's the same, just like it says in little boxes in that little video there, that song. Everything's the same. Everyone's the same. And no one has any power, and no one has any control except for those who put you in the little boxes. So this idea of politics is going to somehow one political party or another political party is going to save your butt ain't going to happen. Politics is nothing more than a show. And, you better start thinking more about the faceless bureaucrat. And I have a perfect story about that once I get through this, having to do with the electrical system here in Ontario, Canada, which will tie in with this and give you an idea what I'm actually talking about. Anyways, back to this thing. Where was I? Both political courses set aside the perspective promoted by the Bolsheviks during the First World War of seeing in the world political and military crisis of capitalism resulting from reaching the limits of capitalist production, the ripening opportunity for the workers and all the belligerent countries prepare for winning power, beginning the social transformation of society. So it's all been about. That's what these wars have been about. Weakening the nations, weakening the people, and bringing them into a world socialist order, I guess. The Almanac Singers at the outbreak of World War II sang pacifist, anti-war, and anti-Roosevelt songs in line with CP's campaign against U.S. war plans. In later years, Pete would express regret for what he considered a mistake in the writing and performance of such material. But once the German army invaded Soviet Union, it was not long before the Almanac Singers became transformed into red, white, and blue patriotic supporters of the U.S. military. They really didn't need much of a push, as they had felt more than a little social pressure against their anti-Roosevelt politics. A new support for American imperialism was anointed with the political veneer of anti-fascism. As much as Pete can consciously and selflessly devote himself to the cause of labor, he had been fundamentally miseducated as to what that really entailed. It was during the war that Pete met and married his longtime companion, Toshi, a filmmaker, producer, and a political activist herself. He also recorded an album of songs from the Spanish Civil War in 1943. He would serve the U.S. Air Force in the Pacific during the war, diverted from his technical training to become an entertainer for the troops. While the U.S. capitalists were raking in huge war profits, they took advantage of the wartime propaganda campaign to force through wage freezes, austerity, forced overtime, and other unpopular measures, which would soon bring working class resistance to bear. Turning away from the example of the Bolsheviks during World War I, the CP actively campaigned as strikebreakers for capital during the war years. For example, the party denounced mine workers President John Lewis in the most lurid terms for his leadership in 1943 coal strike, while blacks sought to take advantage of the war for democracy to press for their own democratic or demonic rights against Jim Crow segregation. The Double V campaign, Victory at Home and Abroad, the CP opposed it in the name of the war effort. The full story of how the CP leadership's conduct led to the demoralization and destruction of the entire generation of courageous and dedicated vanguard workers under its influences beyond the scope of this article. Readers are directed to Art Preetsy's excellent Labor's Giant Step for a detailed description on this process. He explains how this political service to democratic capitalism did the CP no good, as the U.S. imperialism found itself unchallenged within the post-war world market. It was able to buy social peace with labor movement at home and then move to gut the union as its most radical elements. The anti-communist witch hunt of the McCarthy era brought the central role of the CP in the labor movement to a sudden end. Fighting through the Red Scare, by 1949, Pete had quit the CP. No small part of his decision was his delusionment with Stalin, and in 1927 he would write a song critical of Stalin called Big Joe Blues. Seeger reformed the Almanac Singers as the Weavers in 1950. They covered many folk favorites, but in the witch hunt environment, it became increasingly difficult for Pete to maintain the marriage of music and politics. By 1953, entertainment industry political blacklists ended the Weavers. Their later revival was marred by Pete's estrangement over the group's decision to record a cigarette ad. In 1956, Pete was called to testify before the HUAC witch hunt panel. His principled, courageous, and often humorous refusal to cooperate in marked contrast to others who declined to incriminate themselves has been captured in the snippet of testimony. Mr. Seeger, I am not going, this is Mr. Seeger responding, I'm not going to answer any question as to my association, my philosophical religious belief, or my political beliefs, or how I voted in any election, or any of these private affairs. I think these are very improper questions for any American to be asked, especially under such compulsion as this. I would be very glad to tell you my life if you want to hear it. Mr. Seeger, I feel that my whole life I have never done anything of any conspiratorial nature, and I resent very deeply the implication of being called before the committee, that in some way, because my opinions may be different from yours, Mr. Willis, or yours, Mr. Scheer, that I am any less an American than anybody else. I love my country deeply, sir. Chairman Walter, why didn't you make a little contribution towards preserving its institutions? Mr. Seeger says, I feel that my whole life is a contribution. That is why I would like to tell you about it. Chairman Walter, I don't want to hear about it. Mr. Tavaner, I hand you a photograph which was taken of the May Day parade in New York City in 1952, which shows the front rank of a group of individuals, and one is in a uniform with military cap and insignia and carrying a placard entitled Censored. Will you examine it, please, and state whether or not that is a photograph of you? Document was handed to Seeger. Mr. Seeger says, it is like Jesus Christ when asked by Pilate, are you king of the Jews? Chairman Walter stopped that. His conduct at the hearing led to the 1961 conviction in contempt of Congress, carrying a 10 one-year prison sentence. The conviction was overturned the following year. So, what do we got left here? This goes on for a bit longer. But anyways, this is basically, you know, it's part of the weaving, and they're the weavers, part of the weaving of history that most people have no connection to whatsoever. Most people just go with the flow. Whatever the propaganda of the day is, they just seem to suck it up and run with it. And whatever the talking heads on the media are telling them to believe and why these events are actually taking place, they just seem to go with the flow. Well, they would know. They're the professionals. No, they're the hypnotists. They're the psychologists. They're the ones. They're the deceivers. They're the manipulators. This is what we've been living through for so very, very long. Now they've got us to the point where we have all of these boards and committees and commissions which are not accountable to anybody. They just sit there and wait for the next political group to come in. And then they continue with their work. They're the ones that advise the politicians what's necessary. And of course, they tell the politicians they're the experts because, well, they've been there forever. The politicians come and go, but these people that control these boards, commissions, committees, whatever, in the effort to Sovietize the West, just keep marching in lockstep with each other, and they're getting to their goal, and we need to stop them. What do we got here? 1960 Civil Rights Movement found a strong supporter in Pete Seeger. His We Shall Overcome, as previously mentioned, became an anthem for the movement and was prominent in the 63 March on Washington. Pete's blacklisting from national television was finally lifted in the late 60s after he and his wife had produced a New York, New Jersey television show called Rainbow Quest, on which he hosted many folk and popular artists of the day. As the folk renewal continued through the mid-60s, Pete wrote a song that scathingly attacked President Johnson's conduct on the Vietnam War, waist deep in the Big Muddy, described a foolish military leader who got all his troops killed. The song was banned briefly from television, but the ban was overturned and the song performed in 1968. Seeger led 500,000 people at the 1969 anti-war march in Washington, D.C., in singing John Lennon's Give Peace a Chance. He appeared frequently at other anti-war events. In his later years, Pete devoted much of his time and attention to questions of ecology, which is part of the communist Marxist world government agenda, because, and it's also atheist. Ecology, in a book I was reading from way back, uh, stated that they killed God in the mid 19th century, mid 1800s, at the very same time as Darwinism was moved forward. And it says in that book that the God had to be killed in order for ecology to get a foothold, and that the scientists would be the new priests. In other words, whatever the scientists tell you, you believe without question. That's exactly what's happened. So Pete became big in the ecology movement. Well, same, just rebranded, especially in his home region, New York. Continued to inspire successful waves of folk and pop musicians in his latitude. When capitalism was restored in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe in the 1990s, a significant portion of the much reduced CP Committee of Correspondence for Democracy and Socialism Pete and his wife both became supporters of this group. Leanings in his 1993 autobiography, he wrote things such as that Allen was merely a hard driver and not anyone who calls himself a Christian should be prepared to apologize. Slaughter the Jews and Muslims by crusaders, white people, Indians. So Genghis Khan and supporters of Roosevelt could apologize for his support. Democrats had Franco's fame for putting Japanese Americans in concentration camps. She's part African, part European, part Chinese, part Japanese. Then Christianity is what participates. Let's begin. But in terms of the immediate, there is no art. Salvation. Is only, and that's from and that TV movies. They don't make anything. They don't waste their money making things without pushing a message. That's the whole point of it. The movies are propaganda, the newspapers are propaganda, the TV is propaganda, the politicians are propaganda, and so on and so forth. And we've been smothered in it. And you're in a little box. Not my listeners. My listeners are out of the box. And I'm so happy about that. But if we wish to Runner Nation and getting a lot of static. That I really can't do much about. I'm getting a lot of static from the listeners. I'm getting a lot of static because of my connection. It could be, I do have Skype auto set volume actually, and it's on. Do nothing. I'll tell you what, I appreciate that. Let me go check this out. Ever since I upgraded Skype, which I tried not to do for months and months and months, and eventually it just did it itself. My Skype has not been working as well. Everything here is absolutely correct. So what I'm going to do is I am going to hang up on the show and dial back in and see if I can catch a better connection. So I'm going to be out of here for a minute or so, or maybe less, but I'm going to shut this down and reconnect. And see if we get a better connection. Hopefully we do. Wiggle my wires. Which wires? Yuck, yuck, yuck. Wiggle my wires. My wires seem fine. He's got a loose connector. I don't believe so. Have one of Pete Seeger's buddies messing with things. He's got a bad ABCES, whatever the hell it is. I don't know. Is that any better? I don't know. There's nothing really here that's changed any different. I don't know exactly. There it is. We're back. We got it. I think I just, that's better. Okay, so I just hung up and redialed in, so I apologize for that. And I'm sorry about that, but I'm going to put that Pete Seeger thing in, that might have had something to do with it over here. Anyways, I'm going to put this Pete Seeger deal in here because it's something you can connect an awful lot to. And there's a lot of history in it. I haven't really, where the hell did that get to? I didn't really look into that site any further than that one piece. Who are the links? I'm just curious as to links. The links here are to the various websites of the section of the International Marxist Tendency in the rest of the world. In addition, we include links to a number of trade unions, campaigns, reference and solidarity sites that workers in Ireland will find useful. So I guess this is out of Ireland. So there's a whole slew of links in here. Denmark, Russia, Spain, Switzerland, Yugoslavia, yada, yada, yada. Marxist writers, trade unions. And the thing is that all trade unions that I know of on the planet are tied to the UN. Everybody's pushing the UN agenda, which is world socialism, I guess, communism, whatever. But it's what they're trying to do to us, and we got to have to stop it somehow. All of they say this at the UN. They use music. They use sports. They really got into sports pushing their message. They used all arts, as Seeger was involved in. Because the arts is really about deception. The arts is really about fiction. Um, science is an art. Music is an art. Painting is an art. None of it is real. Okay, it's not like a tree, right? And it's all used to deceive. Why do they use such big words in the medical profession, in the scientific professions, in the lawyering professions? Why do they use these terminologies and that nobody can even pronounce the damn things? Why? Because they use jargon, a language that only they fully understand the meaning of the words that they're using, which gives them an advantage over the other people. Now, when you have all of these professions or arts working together, then the general population is screwed because they don't understand these jargon languages, and that's something else has to stop. You can join their group, Fight Back, the Marxist Voice of Labor and Youth, over at Facebook. You can join that group. We have Youth for International Socialism, which, people, they talk about Soros being a socialist and that, or a leftist, who is sponsoring things like Idle No More and sponsoring things like I forgot what that even was. The old anti-capitalist thing. We are the 99% or whatever the hell was going on there. These things are all completely set up. They're all funded, and they're not just funded by the left. They're also funded by the right. The right think tanks are involved in this up to their asses, as are all of the tax-exempt foundations, and there is just a considerable number of those now that seems to be growing in size every day, funding money over to right-left groups to push certain agendas, but all agendas funnel into the same chute. So you have the cattle on the left side of the field and the cattle on the right side of the field, and in order to get through and out of the field, they all have to go down the same chute, and then they all end up in the same damn place. So while they're separate on this side of the fence, they are all one on the other side of the fence. And people need to come to terms with that. Now, yes, I was going to stick this in the chat. And we'll go from there. Oh, now my computer wants to act. What is going on here? Okay, my computer has just taken on a life of its own. Anyway, so now we go over to what they were talking about in that communist or that Marxist piece about the boards and the committees and all that kind of stuff. We have Premier Wynne. That's our premier. She's a very evil woman, but then you can't not be evil if you're a politician. You have to be able to smile as you lie, and she's quite good at it. But this is the politician and the media working together to keep the eyes off the real problem. Now, the Premier of Ontario, Wynne, calls the high electricity prices her mistake. There's going to be a lot of heat flying around over the bankrupting or the pocket picking of the state, province, over the massive increases in our electrical cost. Ontario was the breadbasket manufacturing hub of Canada since its beginning, and now we've been gutted out, just like the American states have been gutted out, and Australia, everybody's been gutted out. We don't manufacture anything anymore. And one of the ways to crush the West, as per Morris Strong, is to fire up electricity rates to the point where gives businesses a logical reason for moving to the east. But she says it's her mistake. Premier says Saturday that she takes responsibility for not paying close enough attention to some of the daily stresses in Ontarians' lives. So I'll have to. Geez, I'm doing this big renovation project on a commercial building right now, and I don't have a cell phone, so I can't just phone. But I think I need to call the Premier's office again. I have to figure out where I can get time to do that this week. But this is this is from Robert Benzie, Queen's Park Bureau Chief, Ottawa. Ontario's hard-hit electricity ratepayers will receive additional relief on their hydro bills beyond an upcoming 8% harmonized sales tax cut, vows Premier Kathleen Wynne. In a surprise move Saturday, a contrite Wynne told 850 Liberal delegates at the party's annual general meeting here that her government made a mistake by allowing rates to soar. It was my mistake, and I'm going to do my best to fix it, she said, adding the looming reduction will be over and above the province's 8% portion of the HST that is being removed from the bills. That measure, announced in September, worth $130 a year to the average household, begins in January and will cost the Treasury $1 billion annually. While Ontario is already $300 billion in the hole, and California, I think, is the most indebted state in the United States, and I think it's $122 billion in the hole or something. And California has a population of 38 million, I believe, and the entirety of Canada has a population of only 34 million people. So, and the province of Ontario has around 13 million people, somewhere in there. So our population is a third of that of California's. Our province is at least 4 times the size of Britain, which would put a population of 240 million people in there. And we are 300 billion in the hole, so what's another billion? The problem is, she says, standing before you today, this is the window dressing I'm talking about. These are the politicians that I'm talking about. Standing before you today, I take responsibility as leader for not paying close enough attention to some of the daily stresses in Ontarians' lives. Electricity prices are the prime example, said the Premier, who fought back tears. Nice acting there, you douchebag. You amoral atheist, world government, slime ball. Fought back tears. Nice acting. Hope they had some nice soft music while you were fighting back those tears during a speech in which she acknowledged the polling numbers and the pundits say many people in Ontario are not happy with me right now. No. Go to Facebook there, Kathleen, you dykish world government douchebag. And what, you thought people were happy when their hydro rates went through the roof and they have to sell their homes and they have to not eat and they can't take their medicine if they plan on staying warm in the wintertime? Not happy with you right now? I get that, she said. But in the weeks ahead and months ahead, we are going to find more ways to lower rates and reduce the burden on consumers. Wynne blamed the skyrocketing prices on the fact that Ontario's electricity system was a mess when the Liberals took office in 2003, so investments were needed in generation and transmission infrastructure. A total and complete freaking lie. We had blackouts and smog days. The system was broken and we had to fix it, but the cost of the change has burdened people in every corner of Ontario, she said. People have told me that they've had to choose between paying their electricity bill and buying food or paying their rent. This is, of course, unacceptable to me, says Dyke Bitch Wynn. While the Premier was short on specifics about what will be done to bring rates down, she suggested there could be streamlining of more than 70 local electricity units, utilities operating in Ontario to find efficiencies. Now, Wynn also revealed that the government would like to see the 107-member legislature expanding to 124 ridings, up from 122, and that would be expected under a redistribution schedule. So we get to here, and then the whole story changes because, the Toronto Star is a Liberal paper. So we're talking about electricity prices till we get, we're only a third of the way through this piece, and all of a sudden, electricity prices disappear completely. The whole story disappears. And now we're talking about more ridings. We're talking about what the Conservatives have done wrong. We're talking about how we can hammer the Conservatives. And just off the point, it just takes a total left-hand turn, if you will, and goes completely off topic. But it was Maurice Strong that was Maurice Strong of UNEP, the United Nations, Rockefeller. And Rio, and in Rio Plus 20, and the first Human Environment Conference in Stockholm, Sweden in 1972. Very nefarious dude. Wanted to destroy our electrical system and everybody else's electrical system, and being a capitalist for himself and his friends and a socialist for everyone else. We see what happens here, and that is basically the communist system or the capitalist system, whichever you want. Some power brokers at the top and everybody else suffering at the bottom. So he was brought in here to destroy. He was brought in here by his godson, Bob Rae, leader of the NDP, and appointed to revamp Ontario Hydro. And we see what we have now. So the problem with this is that she's going to fix the rates. She's not fixing the rates, okay? She's driving the people into more debt. She said she's going to, how we can lower the rates. You're not lowering the rates because you have no capacity to lower the rates. The OEB, the Ontario Energy Board, which is a hands-off, arm's-length board that was created by the legislature, is the one who sets the rates. Not the Premier, not the legislature, but the OEB. And nobody in the government, not the Premier, not the Minister of Energy, nobody can tell the OEB what to do. They can merely make suggestions, but the OEB is 100% in charge of deciding the rates of electricity and gas in the province of Ontario. But none of this is mentioned. It's not mentioned by the Premier. It's not mentioned by the writer in the news article. Hidden. So it's a complete fraud, this piece. The Premier is lying through her frickin' teeth. She cannot do anything about the rates. Giving these so-called rebates and tax rebates is not changing the rates in any way, shape, or form. This is borrowing money and at interest, and then the ratepayers are on the hook for the loan and the interest. So you're actually further in the hole now by the Premier helping you with your electricity bills. The Ontario Energy Board and the Ontario Energy System as it is a complete Enron setup. It was set up by Enron, and the premiers were flowing down, and the ministers were flowing down to visit with Ken Lay in Houston at Enron's head office in order to put this scam together. And therefore, it's a complete and total fraud, and it's criminal, but the police don't investigate it. The politicians of no side have ever brought this forward, even though I've emailed all the emails to them. And it's laid out perfectly well that the media was on side and the politicians were on side and so on and so forth in order to help set up this Enron scam and set it up so that it has basically been privatized. This other thing here that she's talking about well, the premier was short on specifics about what will be done to bring rates down. She suggested there could be streamlining of the more than 70 local electrical utilities operating in Ontario to find efficiencies. Now that is the final takedown. Okay, it started with, we had 300 and some odd, I believe, local electrical distribution systems that would basically be municipally owned. And it was sold to on a private-public partnership in order to amalgamate these things in order to find efficiencies. So all of those things, and they gave the municipalities an opportunity to make money off of this scam, and but they had to make a decision quick. I think they were given 20 or 30 days to make a decision to jump on board with this scam, or if they decided later to jump on board, they would be facing a massive, massive, massive tax clawback on it. So jump in now, boys, while the going's good. So a total scam, and everybody's been hurt. And now, and we read these documents some years ago, that once we've amalgamated it down to this 70, then we shall amalgamate it one more time down to about 8. Where they told us that Ontario Hydro was bad because it was monolithic and it was a monopoly and they had to break it up, there's more Strong nonsense and Enron's nonsense, it wasn't fair to the people because of the monopoly and it being poorly run and everything. That the people deserved some sort of competition. Well, there is no competition, and it is still a monopoly. Only this time, the people don't control it. The private investors control it. And this is exactly what the hell happened in Russia when the Iron Curtain came down. Exactly. Same template. And now it's being applied to the West. But this idea that she has any ability or her government has any ability whatsoever to change the rates is an impossibility because they don't have the authority to change rates. So, the newspaper doesn't investigate it. They just let these people lie their teeth off and lie through their teeth and then write the shit. And then the people go, oh, well, it's about time she did something about rates. We knew if we bitched and complained enough that she'd do something about rates. Well, she doesn't have the capacity to do anything about rates, people. But then you people, not you people, not the people listening to the show, but people in general are so stupid and dumbfounded and lobotomized. And I'm sure today in the Tim Hortons restaurants, people are sitting around drinking coffee going, well, it's about time they did something about these rates. Well, they can't do anything about the rates, people. You didn't even read the story. You can't comprehend what the hell you read. And there is a huge problem. You can't comprehend what you read. You don't know what you read. You don't know the context of what you read or why it was written the way it was written. And that leaves you open to manipulation and deception and fraud. And that part really ticks me off. But that's just the way it is in this world that we live in. And I guess our job is to, as I keep saying, keep talking, teaching, and shining the light, regardless if people don't want to hear it or not. Tough luck. Tough luck. If anybody has any questions today or wants to talk about something today, I believe there's a phone number, which I'll get back to in a second. I'm just looking at something here that got sent to me. I'm not going to mess with that right now. That might be a virus. Who knows? So anyways, there's all kinds of silly stories out there. I find this one kind of funny story because this is what really got me going. I don't remember mentioned this ever before, but this was a week or so ago. This what really got me going, I think. It says RCMP looking at allegations against Mayor Nanaimo. This is November 12th, 2016. And I've always been a guy to question things and look at things and try to figure things out. And this particular story, well, it really has nothing to do with me, is basically where I really... I'd already been doing a fair bit of research when I was in Calgary, but when I moved to Nanaimo, I had a sister living out there, and I'd been working in Calgary, and this bloody cold winter was there, and I had been working as a reporter photographer for a magazine, and then I ended up going to be a foreman or whatever at the Calgary airport when they were building that. And then it was bloody cold, so when we were done that job, and they offered me a pretty good deal to go with them to Winnipeg, but I turned it down because it was too freaking cold there. I just wanted to get warmed up a little bit. So I had a sister in Nanaimo, so I went to Nanaimo, and I was warned there was no work there because it was all union in BC, and there was a big downturn in the economy, and so on and so forth. I said, well, there's always work. You can always find work. This idea that you can't find work is ludicrous. And so I went there and got hired the first day I went looking for work. I wasn't out looking for work but an hour. I was driving around and saw an air track there, and some guy blowing some rock, and went over and said, nobody's running the air track, and I just asked them who, if they had somebody running that. I said, no, we're looking for somebody. I said, good, I'm it. And I had blown out the channel at the nuclear plant when I was 17 or so, and knew how to run these things. And he was all happy, and he says, "This is how screwed up this so-called nation is." The guy says, "You know how to run this?" I go, "Yeah." He says, "Great, you can start in the morning." I go, "Well, that was easy. This idea there's no work. It's a lot warmer here than it was in Calgary or would be in Winnipeg." And, well, that was easy getting a job. But then the guy says, "Don't forget your union card." I go, "My what?" He said, "Union card." I said, "I just came from Alberta. They kill people in the union." Alberta is non-union. And so he says, "This is great. Now I can't hire you because of the shutdown here, and there's all kinds of guys in the union hall, and so I can't hire you. This sucks, because now they'll send me somebody never seen one of these things before." And I went on my way. But the thing about Nanaimo is I'd already, in Calgary, figured out the fraud of renewable energy. I'd done that, and that was mid-'70s maybe. And that was after attending an Earth Day and getting some information with some names on it. I went to research it, and then it was a lot more difficult because I had to go to the library and get through the reference books, but still got done, and it was very apparent this entire renewable energy thing was a fraud, and based on the fraudulent oil crisis, problem, reaction, solution again. And so when I got into Nanaimo, I still didn't understand how controlled the media was at that point, nor did I really care. I was still a young guy. And so when I got to Nanaimo, and I noticed, because the unemployment rate seemed to be high there, and there seemed to be a lot of stress between the people and the so-called municipal government, And there was people with they were protesting, and there were tables set up in the malls and on the streets, asking for people's signatures and handing out information and yada yada yada, which to me is stupid, because if you got a problem, go solve the damn thing. Why are you sitting out here with signs and petitions and stuff? What you're doing then is you're asking someone else to solve your problem, a problem that does not affect the other people that you're asking to show support. So you have failed. Because if you've got the problem, then it's up to you to go fix the problem. And if you don't have the audacity, or you're not ticked off enough to go fix the problem, then why are you asking other people to sign petitions and hand them signs and billboards and bullshit like that? It just shows that you're incompetent, and the people in the ivory towers laugh at you, because as long as they see you down there asking other people to solve your problem for you, they know that you're of no threat to them whatsoever. And that continues today, and it really irritates the hell out of me, and always has. So what I find interesting about this, with the allegations against the mayor, all I did then was talk to these people that were asking for signatures. I didn't give them my signature. I didn't use their signs. I didn't do anything. What the hell's the problem? So they explained it to me, and so I said, all right. So I just went and through their system in Nanaimo 3 times to make sure that I talked to all the appropriate people over and over and over again. So that I got the complete and total gist of what the hell was going on here, and it came across as complete and total fraud, that these people were being harmed unnecessarily, and that it had to be straightened out. So I have fond memories of Nanaimo, because I went home and wrote an article, took it to the local paper, and they told me to hit the road, Jack. We ain't printing that. And I said, but it's the truth. We don't care. Because I'm kind of taking a shot at the mayor and the municipal council and the unemployment insurance and the welfare system and all these different systems that are attached to. And it wasn't going to get printed. And I found an independent, and he read it, and he just looked at me. And there are no independents I don't know of left. There may be some. I know there's lots of independent bloggers and that, but actual papers that get delivered to houses, I don't know that even exists anymore. That's why someday, somehow, I'm going to get a newspaper going. But he read it, and he just looked at me, and he just said, "Can you back this up?" And I said, "I wouldn't have put it down if I couldn't back it up." And he said, "Holy shit." So told me he couldn't print it that week because he was going to press. And by the time I got home, after leaving him, he called and said, "You know what? I pulled a bunch of other stuff out of the paper. This is in. This is damned important, and it has to get out there. So we're running it this week. It'll be out tomorrow. And but I got to warn you, I had to call the mayor and several other of the people named in this article just to let them know it's coming at them. And I don't care. Just fix the problem. That's it. Quit the dance and just fix the damn problem." And which is no different than the Premier of Ontario who says she's going to do something about the rates when she knows bloody well she can't do anything about the rates. The reporter knows she can't do anything about the rates. The Toronto Star newspaper knows she can't do anything about the rates. But they just print this crap anyways. So I did. I got the call from the mayor's office and a few other offices asking me what the hell I thought I was doing. And I said, "I ain't doing nothing, and neither are you, so fix the problem. I'm just explaining what the problem is and how it could be fixed, and get it fixed." And so then they started inviting me out for dinner and steak and wine and all this kind of stuff. They'd like to meet me, like to talk to me. I could have took them up on the option, and I could have jumped on board with those people, but then I would have had to sell my soul. And I could have stayed in Nanaimo, done very well for myself, but that's not the kind of guy I am. So I declined their offer, and then I went looking for a job, and that's when I found how locked down every town and city and community is in this nation, and probably every other nation. Because I would go and I would fill out applications. This is what do you call those things you fill out? Nowadays, you fill out something when you're looking for a job. I've never really had to look for a job too much, so whatever those things are you fill out today. So I'd fill out an application. They would read it, and they would say, looks good, looks good, looks good. And they'd hit my name, and they'd go, are you the guy that wrote that article in the newspaper? I am. And then would I get a very nice, fuck off, get out of our business, we're not hiring, piss off. But your window sign says you're hiring, not you. And this is how cliquey things are. And that was a very, very good experience. I wouldn't have missed that for the world. It got tough, mind you, because I was running out of money. And apparently, having just landed in town and wrote that article, I became extremely popular with the business and political players in the town. But eventually, I did get a job and worked out okay. Got a brand new pickup truck and an expense account and a salary and a commission. But it wasn't because that I had any special talents. It's just that I'm a very tenacious son of a bitch. And when they tell me, after a couple of weeks of everybody just seeing my name and throwing me out of their businesses, I did finally get a call. And these old stories I've repeated before, but I did get a call from a company that I'd never heard of before, never went to, didn't know existed. And they just opened up a new part of the company, and they were expanding. And they called me and said, you come in for an interview. Says, I don't know who you people are. And they said, well, you haven't talked to us, but you did talk to one of our friends, and they thought that we should call you because they thought that I had some spark. And so I went down there, and I already had time, and the job was on the road, and I needed a vehicle, which I didn't have anymore. And I'm thinking, boy, this is hitting the bottom of the barrel. I finally get a hook here, and I ain't going to get the job. So I just looked at the owner of the business and sitting across the desk from him, again in my mid-20s, and I looked at him. And when he said I had to have a vehicle, which I wasn't going to be able to get my paws on, I just looked at him and brought my fist down hard on his desk and stuck my finger at him and said, look, here's the deal. Somebody can walk in here with a brand new Mercedes or Cadillac, and you may be impressed, but there's one thing you're missing here. None of them will ever outsell me. So my advice to you is you go get me a vehicle and deal with it. Now, I pretty much figured I embarrassed myself, but you do what you got to do. And that was 9 o'clock in the morning, that interview at noon. I got a doorbell rang, and a guy standing at the door and asked who he is, and he tells me he's from the company, and he wanted to show me my brand new pickup truck, 4x4 pickup truck, and give me my gas card and my expense account and all that kind of stuff, and all the literature on what it was. It was just basic building materials, doors, windows, whatnot, kitchens. And that I'm on board, and that's how you get something done. Okay, this nonsense that goes on in our nation, that's looking for someone else to solve the problems, has got to stop. It really, truly has got to stop. This is why we're in the position we are in today, because people are always looking for someone else to solve the problem. The problem will never get solved unless you, who see the problem, start solving it. And it's actually fun, really. The other day there, when I was Friday, when the municipal clerk or cleric came out of the store that we're working on, it was the first thing in the morning, and we were just getting started. And I seen her come out, and I just walked over to the car and didn't say nothing. Her window was down a little bit. And when she turned around and saw me standing there quietly, I thought she was going to have a heart attack. And she couldn't get the window up fast enough. And I seen her reaching for the door locks. And I said, "Good morning, how are you?" No, I didn't rant or rave at her or anything. Just my mere presence there freaked her completely out. And we had a chat. And I had a little bit of fun. Never raised my voice once. But the fear in that woman's face was just worth everything. And this is what we got to do. We got to put the fear in them. And if we're not talking to them, and we're not explaining what we know to them, then we're giving them a free ride. And they have no fear. We got to put the fear into them. Because they'll just go on doing what they're told to do if they ain't getting no pushback. And then whose fault is it? Again, it would always be our fault. You can't blame them. They're just doing what they're told to do. And if nobody's holding them to account for what they're doing, well then, where's the problem? So we have no right to blame any of these people for anything they do. We're allowing them to do it. Worst part is we're paying them to do it to us. That really sucks. And therefore we must hold their feet to account. And we will, because that's what's necessary. Oh, I saw some stories today, a doctor got busted for groping his patients and doesn't think he should lose his paperwork to be a doctor. And I see lawyers charged with pedophilia, and they shouldn't. I see hockey coaches. I see teachers. This thing about I was at getting a coffee the other night, and I was up at the store, and a younger guy came in and wanted to buy a pack of smokes. And I know everybody that works at the store, so Don asked, I think it was Don, no it wasn't, it was Michelle asked the young guy for ID so that he could buy his pack of smokes. So he pulled out his ID card and gave it to her, and she looked at him and reached around and got a pack of smokes. And I says, how old do you got to be to buy a pack of smokes? She says, 19. Really? So you got to be 19 years old to buy a pack of smokes, but only 16 years old because they're dropping the age of consent from 18 to 16 for anal sex. So you got to be 19 to buy a smoke, but only 16 to take it up the ass. Something wrong here? There's something wrong here. Now I see Turkey. I should look into this because I saw a couple things go by on Facebook. The Turkey, I believe it was Turkey. Let me see here. Turkey and let's see, child rape, I guess it was, wasn't it? Let's see what we got here for something that comes up on this. Thousands take to the streets against law. Turkey child rape widespread. Turkey's parliament set to legalize child rape. Child rape widespread in Turkey. Turkey child rape widespread. Turkey seeks to okay child rape. Turkey makes child rape legal. So this is where we're headed, people. This is what's happening in our schools with the early age sex education. These Satanists that run the world, they're not just Satanists, they're pedophiles. And they're setting the children up as fodder, I guess, for the pedophiles. And why people are not absolutely freaked out and ticked off and got the ropes out is beyond me. Now, this says the Independent News. I'm just going to look at this. Thousands have taken to the streets of Istanbul and other cities in Turkey to protest against a bill that would allow child rapists to walk free if they marry their victims. The country's government insists the law would help resolve legal challenges caused by widespread child marriage in the country. Yet critics argue the bill legislates rape. In Istanbul, protesters clapped and chanted, "We will not shut up, we will not obey, withdraw the bill immediately." About 3,000 people gathered in Istanbul's Kadıköy Square, many waving placards that said, "Rape cannot be legislated," and AKP, "Take your hands off my body," in reference to the ruling Justice and Development Party that proposed the bill. Similar demonstrations were held in other cities, including yada yada yada. If the law passes, men who sexually abuse girls under 18 without force, threat, or any restriction on consent and marry them could have their conviction quashed or avoid prosecution. The proposed changes would apply to cases between 2005 and 16. So it's retroactive, I guess. Protester, whatever, told the BBC, "I am a mother. How am I supposed to react to this? I can't believe it. It's not normal. It does not make sense. Of course it's not normal, and of course it doesn't make sense, but you better believe it." If I let this happen to my daughter, if the mothers in this country let this happen, it means we are not mothers. Exactly. And that can go very long range, because if you are allowing them to drive these 60-plus needles into your child, you're not a mother. If you're allowing them to fluoridate your children, you're not a mother or a father. If you allow this nonsensical pedophilia ring that calls itself the sex education group and the justice system to continue, then you're not a mother or a father. You're not a parent. You don't give a damn about the kid. Or you've been so weakened of the mind and the spine, you can't get yourself up off the floor to stand up against this nonsense. And I see these reactions, from people going, "Well, geez, I'm glad we ain't in Turkey." Well, if that's your thought, you are a turkey. You're an idiot turkey. Okay, everything that happened is happening on a global scale. They start it in one place and they bring it across. And as it said in that video about destabilization and normalization, that's exactly what this is all about. They destabilize, they shock. It's almost like shock and awe, right? These are bombs they're dropping. These are spiritual, psychological bombs they're dropping in on you. And it is shock and awe. It is designed to shock you and destabilize you and knock you off balance, because everything you thought was normal isn't. So these are bombs that they're dropping. Big, bad bombs, but they're spiritual, psychological bombs. Another protester told Associated Press, pardoning the crime of sexual assault or dropping it due to prescription is out of the question. People who commit sexual assault and rape crimes cannot be cleared. One of the women protesters, who gave her name as Rue, told AFP, "We will not allow the AKP to acquit and set free rapists in this country. Women will resist and take to the streets until this law and similar other laws are withdrawn." Another protester, a man named Ugungur, attended the protest with a 14-year-old daughter. "I am concerned about my daughter's future," he told. If the passing of any law they want in the parliament, the AKP joins a comfortable majority in the 550-seat parliament holding 317 seats. That's the maximum we can do to protest, he added. That is not the maximum you can do. You can walk into your legislature and you can arrest these sons of bitches. Now listen to this. The UN Children's Fund said it was deeply concerned about the draft bill. That I call bullshit on. Okay? All of this crap begins at the UN, or one of their think tanks, or one of the tax-exempt foundations. Okay? This all is coming from the globalist pen. These abject forms of violence against children are crimes which should be punished as such, and in all cases, the best interest of the child should prevail, said spokesman Christopher Blukovich. MPs approved the draft law in its initial reading on Thursday, and it will be voted again on Tuesday. But following the controversy, Turkish Prime Minister Yildirim has ordered the AKP to suspend talks with the opposition about the law. The bill was intended to release men jailed after marrying underage girls in religious ceremonies which had received the consent of the girl's family. He rejected suggestions the plan amounted to amnesty for rape. Well, what else is it? You rape a girl, an underage girl, then you married a girl, and that negates the rape. That's like this jackass cop that shot that kid on the bus or the streetcar or whatever in Toronto, shot the kid 9 times, killed him with his first shot or whatever, and then waited, and then shot him a bunch more times, and they found him guilty of attempted murder, not murder, because they said he was already dead when he shot him the other times. Therefore, he only attempted to kill him, even though he killed him. And so this is the same kind of nonsensical psychological bullshit. You raped the girl, but now you married a girl, so you actually didn't rape the girl. And this is your judicial system, folks. Okay? But then they were attorneys, and they turned from one lord to another, didn't they? Okay, so who are they working for? They're working for Satan. And the UN is the culmination, it is the meeting place of the global Satanists. That's what it was set up for. And for the UN to say, oh, we're looking out for the kids. Well, why is it if the UN's looking out for the kids, the UN's pushing this early sex education and anal sex and all this stuff for little kids? Well, it's because they care. That's because the UN cares. No, the UN is a pedophile ring. And they are getting these children ready to be abused, and then those who abuse them have to say, sorry, I really meant to ask for her hand in marriage. Sort of thing. I'm a 56-year-old politician or a doctor or a coach or whatever. And, my intent was not to rape, but to ask for her hand in marriage. And now that we've consummated the marriage more or less, I think we should go through with the marriage, and therefore I'm not guilty of rape. Only in the legal, satanic, judicial system would that make any sense to anybody. But that's what's running the show here. And that's why you got to get out and rock the shit out of that boat. The proposed regulation is intended to institutionalize child abuse. Physical and sexual violence against children and women is a crime. The proposals have been criticized by pro-government groups, the Women's and Democracy Association, whose deputy chairman is President Yadya. Said a major problem with the bill would be proving what constitutes force or consent. Now, this goes back to Warburg in 1950, okay? We're going to have what we want, which is world government and, I guess, child marriage and child rape and Islamic law, Sharia law throughout the world. because we're going to have it by force or consent. It said, how can the own will, that's in quotes, of such a young girl be identified? We would like to draw attention to issues that might arise in case of it coming into force. A petition on the change has 600,000 signatures. Now, in Ontario here, our premier and those who set the education agenda, in particular the sexual education agenda, who was one of the main players on setting that agenda, but a pedophile. So the government's saying that the children are sexual beings right after they're born. Okay, from basically the moment they're born forward, they are actually sexual beings. And therefore, it is our job, and this is the directive from the UN, it is our job to make sure that these children are properly educated in their sexuality, of which they are from when they're born. They're not little children, right, who just want to go out and play and explore. No, they're sexual beings from the time they're born, and therefore we must take away their childhood from them and fill their head with stuff of which they have no knowledge, nor do they want any knowledge, and it basically destroys the child. Okay, that's what this is. It's all about the destruction of the child, and this has got to bloody well stop. People got to quit putting their own little problems aside. They got to quit worrying about that and get digging in a little deeper on what is destroying your nation, because the goal of the Satanists at the United Nations, the globalists, and these are your politicians, these are your tax-exempt foundations, these are your capitalists, these are your communists, these are your bankers, your lawyers, your teachers, your preachers, are all involved in this stuff. But together they still account for a very small portion of the population. And we need to knock them down. You know, I hear people, whining and complaining about this little thing, this and that, and that's what they do. Okay, they create all this chaos that negatively affects different groups in different ways and different amounts. But they never get to see the larger picture because they're so concentrated on this little thing that's bugging them. They don't understand that little thing is just one little piece in this huge picture that is absolutely destroying our nations. And then they can come in and pick our bones. Now, I saw a thing there that I thought last night, it said this thing has already been passed, and I don't know what the date on this particular story is. It doesn't have a date on it. So I thought I saw something this is asinine. Here's a bunch of pictures of mothers and that, protesting, fist in the air. You can't do this. You can't do this to our children. Well, they can if you're just out there protesting. And they will if you're just out there protesting. Because they understand what a protest is. Anytime you stand with a bunch of placards in front of a political forum and with your fists in the air bitching and complaining, they know that you're not coming any closer. They welcome your protest because the protesting that is done in the streets and that shows specifically that you do not have the audacity or the balls, if you will, to walk through those doors and put the cuffs on these clowns. You don't need the banners. You don't need the signs. You don't need your fists in the air. You need to quietly just simply walk through the frickin' doors and put the cuffs on them. Because this is a clear case of child abuse, and child abuse is against all legal and lawful situations. But the legal system, being the slippery thing it is, is being redefined. It's always being redefined to benefit those who are harming you, to protect those that are harming you and your families. So all the change of politicians and all the protesting in the streets is going to change absolutely nothing. They actually use the data gained from these protests to see how it worked out, how to swing the policy to shut these people up. So when you go to protest, you're actually helping those you're protesting against because you are giving them data that they can use and skew and mess with and come back from a different angle and beat you in the ground. So don't give them anything. Do not protest. It's time we just got the job done. This is World War III, and it will be the last war. That's the whole plan. It is the final war. 3 strikes and you're frickin' well out. Game over. And we have allowed them full use of the field with no resistance since prior to World War I. So don't sit in the stands sweating over whether your team's going to hit it over the fence or blow it and strike out and game's over and your team's lost. You are the freaking team. You lose this war, you lose big time. That old saying, you're coming up to 1,000 years of freedom or 1,000 years of tyranny. Well, you're long ways away from 1,000 years of freedom where we're standing today. Strike 2, the batter on deck ain't that good. And all your sweating and towel waving in the stands is not going to make him hit it over the fence. And this attitude, well, we tried our best. You didn't do shit. You sat in the stands and you whined and bitched and complained. And that final pitch came through, you hung your head and say, I guess we lost. This is not entertainment. This is the future. Your future, your children's future, grandchildren's future, and those now yet born. And I swear to God, if we don't start getting something done soon, we're going to lose this game. And one of your offspring will be standing over your grave somewhere down the road and look down at it and say, why the hell didn't you do something? It's time we get it done. I mean, how much more can they throw in our faces before we say, enough is enough? No one man or woman can stop this. But we outnumber them so greatly, it's ridiculous. So if we don't stop World War III, I mean, the good thing about this is we're not dodging real bombs. They're real bombs, make no mistake, but they're not a bomb that's going to blow you to bits. But these are most definitely bombs as they try to shock the West into submission. And this is a case of shock and awe. These are bombs falling upon us. And we need to do something about it soon. Anyways, looks like we're out of time. I'm sorry if I sound like I'm preaching like an old dog today, but that's... Anyway, tonight so everybody take care.
Lower classes, social slime, they don't matter, genocide, sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care, Caesar shit, force of air, fuck them back into